I think we're live now.
Yeah, just waiting for 7. Right, good evening everyone. It's 7 o'clock, it's Wednesday the 16th of December, and welcome to East Herts Council meeting. I'll just do the preliminaries that we have to do at every meeting these days. The local authorities of police and crime panels coronavirus flexibility of local authority and police and crime panel meetings, England and Wales, regulations 2020, came into force on Saturday the 4th of April 2020 to enable councils to hold remote committee meetings during the COVID-19 pandemic period. This was to ensure local authorities could conduct business during the current public health emergency. The meeting of the council is being held remotely under these regulations via Zoom and is being recorded and live streamed on the East Herts District YouTube channel. So welcome to our meeting, and just before we get really involved with some of the issues for tonight, let me welcome Reverend Ismena Pentalo, who is the vicar of St Mary's Church in Ware, who will speak to us for a few minutes before the meeting starts. Ismena, good evening to you.
Good evening, thank you. Thank you very much indeed for the invitation. It's lovely to be with you, and I look forward to the time when we can be together in the council chamber again, of course. I have a brief reflection on the things really that have been present for me over the last few days, which I hope are helpful to share with you. And it begins with a friend of mine who is an anthropologist. She's a religious anthropologist, that's her specialism. She is an observant Jew, and she's also a bit of a foodie. And so over the last few nights, she has been posting 2 pictures on her Facebook page, through which I and many of her other friends have been vicariously eating fried food. We've been joining in with her Hanukkah celebrations. Each night during Hanukkah, she lights her menorah candle, and because she loves the traditions and they're really important to her, she also prepares something that is fried to eat. So I've been sharing that tradition with her because she's my friend and because it's a wonderful opportunity. It's also a fun thing to do, to explore all the different ways you can eat fried food, and to contemplate the risks she has in her kitchen with a deep fat fryer on every night. But there we go. But the point of that oil and a deep fat fryer, as I'm sure many of you will know, is the story of Hanukkah, which involves a tiny little jar of oil. It comes from a period of Greek occupation in the land of Israel, when a very small group of Jews, the family of the Maccabees, successfully defended their temple, defeated the occupying force, and set about rededicating it, reclaiming their holy space. To do so, they wanted to relight their candles, and they found they only had enough oil for one day. To prepare oil to use in the temple took time, so they thought perhaps they'd have light for a day. But it happened that the light was given to them for 8 days until the next batch of oil was ready. So Hanukkah starts with the miracle of light that did not go out. At the same time as I've been joining in Heather's Hanukkah celebrations over the medium of Facebook, in our churches, we have also been lighting a candle, one each week, marking the journey through Advent towards the greater lights of Christmas. In Hanukkah, we have a story about reclaiming sacred space, reclaiming holy space, a story of a miracle of a light that did not go out. At Christmas, we have God coming into what might be called really rather unholy space, a sort of messy, impractical, temporary family life. But we also have a story of the hallowing of that messy, ordinary space, reclaiming the space as holy, if you like, and the miracle of a light that did not go out. Both of us then give us light that is victory over what would limit or defile us. Light that is produce from the land, light that is also produce of the divine, if you like. We have light in a pot of oil, we have light in a child, And from both, we have the light of the teaching and the healing and the human endeavour that goes along with both stories. Very different ways. Nevertheless, the light sits at the heart of both of them. In both stories, we see light in action, in the interaction of God in our human need and our human normal everydayness. Those two festivals and the fact that we are keeping them and we're preparing for them are a marker of our year and a little sign perhaps that despite all the press and all the fuss, our religious festivals of any kind aren't being cancelled this year. They are being changed, but they're not being cancelled. We might do things differently. Our Hanukkah celebrations will be different. Our Advent observance is different. Our Christmas celebrations will be different. But that doesn't change our ability to light our menorah candles. It doesn't prevent us from lighting our Advent candles or putting up our Christmas lights. And nothing can change what those lights stand for. Nothing can change the light in the divine, the light that is kindled and kept alive in us. Nothing can change the light in our lives, the light that reflects that divine light, the light that is undying and eternal and ungrammatically unputoutable. So with those images of light and the hope that light kindles, this is an adapted prayer which you can join in with at the end by saying Amen if you wish to. Kindle in our hearts, O Lord, the flame of love which never ceases. May its light burn in us, giving light to others. Give us the grace to keep and hold and share the stories of light. Amongst them, the light of our Hanukkah traditions, the light of our Advent and Christmas traditions, light that reclaims our holy spaces, and light that makes our spaces holy. Light that makes things possible in us and for others. Light that is hope and healing and comfort and strength. Light that does not change and cannot be extinguished. Kindle in our hearts, O Lord, the light of your love, which never ceases. Amen.
Amen.
Amen. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, Ismail. I have the Hanukkah candles here, which I wasn't going to light because they were behind me and they burned down very quickly, and I didn't want to find the filing cabinet on fire during the course of the meeting. But I will light them. It's the seventh night tonight, so we light 7 candles, and there is a servant candle, which is the one in the middle. There we are. So let me know if anything catches fire, won't you?
And happy Hanukkah, Chairman.
Thank you very much.
Hanukkah.
Right, okay. Thank you very much, Ismaila.
Thank you. So I will say goodbye anyway. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
Right. Cheerio.
Bye-bye. Thanks a lot.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Happy Hanukkah, Jonathan.
Thank you. So on we go now with the next part of the meeting, and naturally welcome you all here, and welcome to any residents who may be watching on the East Hearts District YouTube channel. As far as voting is concerned, councillors, you'll know what we do. Normally, of course, we would show hands in the council chamber, but the technology allows us to use the green tick, something that we're in favour of, a red cross to signify against, and we use the blue hand for abstentions during the voting. But we also use the blue hand if you want to take part in a discussion or a debate. Do we have anybody here on telephone this evening? I know last time we did. I don't think we have, but if we have, please do say so.
Don't think so, Chairman. Looking at the screen.
All right, Peter, thank you very much.
It's a hand up, Chairman. John Berman.
Yes, John.
Sorry, Mr. Chairman. Sorry, I think I'm on my screen here. I'm limited to thumbs up, or I don't. So I just have to. I'll put a thumbs up to vote with, and
have you gone into participants at the bottom of the screen? And then you might find you've got the green.
Okay.
And the red.
I think we'll manage.
All right. Okay.
Yeah.
For the guests that are joining us please remember, you're welcome to stay, but normally guests who are here, they normally press the leave button when they're finished. But of course, if they could turn off their camera and mute their microphone if they are staying online. And for the rest of us, of course, we mute our microphones during the course of the meeting. Now, let's introduce Barbara Dougherty. I'm assuming she's here. Is Barbara here? Where are you, Barbara? Unmute yourself, please. Is she here? From Isabel Hospice? Ah. Barbara, I think, is here.
She is, yes.
Yes. Can you unmute yourself, Barbara?
Yep. Yes.
Ah, there you are.
All
Excellent.
done. Good
Very
evening.
Very good. Good evening. For those, thank you all for wearing your Christmas or seasonal jumpers and ties and hats. And as you know, traditionally we do that, but we also make a donation to one of the chairman's charities. And in this case, we've said it will be Isabel Hospice, which I know a number of you are involved in one way or another with Isabel Hospice. And, this has been a really tough year for the hospice because they've not been able to do the usual fundraising events they would normally do. So we've invited Barbara, who's the president of Isabel Hospice, just to speak to us for a few minutes to tell us about what they've been doing, what some of the problems are. And you will have seen an email that Esther Piper sent round on my behalf with the chairman's bank account, not my personal bank account, for donations, or you can send checks in to the chairman's office and we'll make sure that Barbara gets those. Barbara, please go ahead.
Thank you so much. Good evening, everybody. Thank you very much for inviting me. I'm delighted just to give you an update about how we've been managing this year. But first of all, to set it into context, we started this year, we were about to come to the end of the last financial year, and we knew that the running costs this year would be somewhere in the region of 6.2 million. Now, of that, we were expecting probably to have somewhere around 34–35% from government funding. And with our inpatient unit, our specialist nurses, our hospice at home teams, our huge body of volunteers, we were set for a good year. So in March, when obviously the virus started to affect everybody, we had to start closing our services. We closed all our living well centres, which, as you probably know them as day hospices, Bishop Stortford, Welwyn, Hoddesdon and Waltham Cross. We had to make our specialist nurses work virtually, which was very, very difficult for them. Normally, they're face-to-face with patients. We kept our inpatient unit open, and we opened another 6 beds, which we let to the NHS, and we actually took in some COVID patients. So as you can imagine, that was an enormous, stressful situation for the nursing staff at the hospice. We kept our hospice at home teams running, so we were able to go out into people's homes in full PE kit, and we were able to care for patients in their own homes, which is actually where patients wanted to be. We furloughed about 80 staff. Now, some of those were administrative, some were fundraising, some because they had health problems themselves. We moved nursing staff around, and we had to move very, very quickly. As you can imagine, when March came, we had to literally act within a couple of weeks. So moving nursing staff so we retain them, some went into the inpatient unit, some went to help the specialist nurses. But the most important thing was that we kept the service running, that we kept Isabel Hospice running for patients. Cancer and other life-limiting diseases do not know there's a virus around. And as we've all read in the press, cancer services were somewhat depleted. We were absolutely adamant that we would keep this inpatient unit up and running for patients. We had a great problem getting our PPE. We had all sorts of boxes of masks and gowns coming into us, some of which were defective. We had a lot of people sourcing them for us, and we had a lot of people making masks and bags for the staff's clothes so that they could put them in immediately when they went off duty to stop cross-infection. So I think that the staff, the managers, the chief executive, the trustees worked very, very quickly to make sure that we were still able to operate. So that was one side of it. And I feel very proud that Isabel Hospice actually stepped up and we were still caring for patients, and obviously caring for patients and their families into bereavement. But what happened to the fundraising? I had 4 major events cancelled. All our marathon runners obviously couldn't run, although some did in strange locations. All our major mass events were cancelled immediately. So we had to think of new ways of raising money. We've done all sorts of things like virtual gin tastings. That was quite fun. We've had people doing challenges at home, walking the mile for us, climbing the stairs for us. We've had people doing tea parties, having a small bubble of people so that they could actually raise money for us. It's quite astounding what people will do. We set up a fighting fund which raised over £160,000 over a few months. We also had 2 tranches of special funding from the government cascaded down from Hospice UK. The first one was 600,000, and that helped enormously. But we had to keep fundraising. We had to keep the money coming in. We had some very, very generous donors who, aware of what was happening at Isabel Hospice, would be sending us donations large and small. What about our trading company? We have 16 shops. So all those were closed. Absolutely everyone, and all the managers furloughed, and all the volunteers had to step back. We opened our eBay department very quickly. What were people doing in lockdown? Well, they were clearing out. They were turning out their cupboards, and we had queues of people when they were able to actually come to the welcome centre at the administrative centre and actually hand over goods. And if I tell you that in the month of November, eBay itself made nearly £60,000. So that is from bric-a-brac, from books, from items, antiquities, clothes, vintage clothing. So that kept us running, kept the money coming in. And gradually we opened the shops again. So one by one, each shop was opened with very, very careful provision for people coming in and out, wearing face masks, hand gel, as you all know. So we have managed to keep fundraising. We hope very much that come perhaps next spring, March or April, we can once again set about having fundraising events which will bring in that enormous money that we need. We've already planned a golf day for the 16th of April. We held our last golf day actually in September, where golfers were playing at a distance and we had no big meal or lunch afterwards. It is possible. So I would like to thank everybody who's supported Isabel Hospice over this time. I think the patients and their families have been enormously grateful to us. We were talking about light just a little while ago and that lovely prayer, and we had our Lights of Love service. We normally have 8 trees in all our towns and villages. So we had a virtual Lights of Love ceremony where we lit a light. And many, many people across our catchment area did the same in their own homes. And it is the bringing of this light and this light of hope to people, which I hope brings comfort to people. We've just got a few more initiatives. You may ask, how can we help? We're actually doing Christmas tree recycling this year, only at the moment in the AL postcode. So if you know anybody who wants to recycle a Christmas tree, we'll come and collect and take it away to be chipped for a small donation. We've got a Christmas virtual fair going on at the moment. If you log on to our website, instead of our stall holders gathering at a great big venue, they're now selling online, and a donation will go to Isabel Hospice. So there are lots of ways in which you can help. And I'd like to thank Jonathan Kay so much for his support this year, which has been absolutely tremendous. It is this ongoing support we need now. When we come out of this difficult time, we will have to look very carefully at our services and the way that actually we deliver those. And we hope that our community will continue to support us. So thank you all so much. Thank you for giving me the opportunity, and a very happy Christmas from everybody at Isabel Hospice. Thank you.
I can't see Councillor Kay on the screens.
I think we've lost him. Councillor Crofton, are you there to take over for a bit?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, well, unless Stephen can get him back fairly quickly, are you okay to take over for a short while?
Okay, I'll try to pick up the pieces. I think we're looking at item 2 on the agenda now.
Not quite, no, because I believe there's another guest, the chairman, in. I believe.
Right, beg your pardon.
I think he is on here somewhere. You can unmute.
I can unmute.
Oh, I think the chairman's back now. Actually, I think.
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, I apologise. I don't know why the computer decided it wasn't having it, and I've come to the laptop instead. So apologies. Where are we up to?
Welcome back, Jonathan. You've been greatly missed.
Your second guest, Kevin Clogner.
All right. Have you heard from Mr. Clogner yet?
I think he's here.
Good evening.
Hello, Mr. Clogner. And thanks, by the way, to Barbara, and apologies that I missed the last part of what she was saying there. Mr. Clogner, well done to you, because the countryside charity, the CPRE, used to be the Campaign to Protect Rural England. They have given you an award, the Peterkin Award, and I understand you moved to Hormead 3 years ago, and you wanted to get more involved with the community, so you decided to become a parish councillor. And when you initially took on the Meads recreational grounds, it was in a poor state, but with your horticultural skills, he apparently has worked hard over the last 2 years and has made various improvements. He's refurbished the pavilion inside and out, improved the play area, planted many new trees and installed new benches. And you've organised a lot of community events, helping to improve the grounds further and bring the community together. So congratulations on your award. Well done.
Many thanks indeed, and thank you for allowing me to come along to your meeting to take part. You know, it's very much appreciated, and thank you very much indeed for your kind words. And yes, when I moved 3 years ago into the village, it seemed a very good idea to become a parish councillor, because then you sort of make new acquaintances and find out what's going on. And I would highly recommend it to anyone to do so. And especially this very difficult year we've been in, the improvements we have made to the recreational ground, and really throughout the parish as a whole, have really lifted the spirits of our parishioners during these very tough times. Back in October 2019, we planted 10,000 daffodils in the local recreational ground, and they were flowering in April when we were all really needing some brightness in our lives, as it were. And they really did lift the spirits. And in generally speaking, in all the different improvements we've made at the recreational ground, be it new benches, improving the play equipment, all these are very simple things that really just need a bit of time and effort and creative thinking, has made a really big difference to our local community. And even the tough times that we're facing at the moment again, we've managed to organise a really lovely tree, which is great to walk to, and a lot of our local parishioners have started to decorate all their houses at the front again, just to brighten the village up and lift the spirits during these difficult times. But there's just one other thing I would just briefly add, and it's more connected with the parish council. We are particularly lucky to have the most amazing district councillor being Peter Boyland, and I would say he has been so supportive, not only of the parish council, but myself being a new parish councillor. We are internally grateful for all the effort and help that he has given us, certainly since my short time at the council. But thank you very much indeed.
Well, Kevin, thank you very much. And Peter probably didn't expect that tonight, but thank you very much. And
no,
well done. Congratulations.
I didn't pay him neither. Sorry.
No, he wasn't prompted at all. Kevin, thank you, and well done on receiving the Peterkin Award from the CPRE. Other award winners included Birch Green Village Shop, run by Victoria and Carly. They got the Business Award. They're next door neighbours, and they opened the shop in December 2019. Their main objective was to run the shop as sustainably as possible. Another award, the Chairman's Award, went to Chewin Village Store and to Peter Miller, who's chairman of the management committee of Chewin Stores. That's a community shop, and the village grouped together last year to do a community share sale to enable them to buy the freehold of the property, and apparently it's been a great success ever. So congratulations to all of the award winners. I'm going to mention now, when we have meetings, often it is Stephen King who is twiddling the knobs and making sure that everything goes according to plan. Stephen is with us tonight. Where are you, Stephen? Can you stick your camera on?
Hi, Chairman.
There you are. Well, just wanted to congratulate you, Stephen, because Stephen is our finance management trainee, and you've passed with distinction your level 3 Association of Accounting Technicians exams, and you're now a fully qualified accounting technician that you can go forward to study your chosen full accounting qualification, CIMA. I know you started with East Herts Council just out of school in September 2017 as an apprentice. And according to Stephen Linnett, the head of strategic finance and property, you're very mature for your age, and you have a very can-do, helpful attitude, and you quickly became well known and popular with staff at all levels. So Stephen, congratulations on passing your exam. Well done.
Thank you very much. Thanks, Chairman.
Right, Peter, let's go on now to any apologies for absence.
Yes, Chairman, there are two that I'm aware of, Councillor Newton and Councillor Simons.
Right, thank you very much. Shall we do a roll call?
Yep.
If you can just go through the register, as it were, and if people can just, say something to establish that you are there. Go
Okay,
on.
start with yourself, Chairman. Councillor Kay.
Yep, I'm here.
Angela Alder.
On the attack, right? Looking to make
Yep.
amends here.
David Andrews.
Happy to say something to establish I'm here.
Terence Beckett.
I am Christmas present.
Sophie Bell.
Present.
Ruth Buckmaster.
Present.
Eric Buckmaster.
Here.
Rosemary Bolton.
Sibley present.
Peter Boylan,
Present.
Mary Brady,
Present.
Dan Bull,
Present.
John Burnix,
Present.
Louis Corp,
Present.
Ken Crofton,
Yes, I'm here.
Ben Crystal. Ben Crystal.
Present.
Yep. Alex Curtis,
Present.
George Cutting,
Present.
Bob Deering,
Yes, proof of life.
Ian Devonshire,
Present.
Holly Drake,
Present.
Joseph Dumont,
Yeah, I'm here.
Rishi Fernando,
Present.
James Frecknell,
Present.
Marnie Goldspink,
Yes, I'm here.
Jan Goodeve,
Present.
Tony Hall,
Present.
Linda Hazy, I've seen, yes.
Present.
Diane Hollybon,
Present.
Andrew Huggins,
Season's greetings.
yep. Jeff Jones,
I'm very much with you, and Merry Christmas.
Ian Kemp,
Present.
Brian McAndrew,
Present.
Malcolm McMullen,
Present.
Apologies to Sally Newton, and Tim Page. Councillor Page. I think I saw him on here before. Yeah. Mark Pope. Mark Pope.
Present.
Yeah. Judith Ranger. Absent, I think. Okay, and Carolyn Redfern.
Present.
Stephen Reid.
Good evening.
I've got an apology here I've just seen from Councillor Rowley, so he's not here. Peter Ruffles.
Present.
Suzanne Rutland Barsby.
Present.
David Snowden.
Here.
Murray Stevenson.
Present.
Tony Stowe.
Present.
Apology from Norma Simons. Alistair Warbooth.
Present.
Jeffrey Williamson.
Present.
Chris Wilson.
Present.
John Wiley.
Present.
That's it.
Thank you very much. Who was that last apology from, Peter? Sorry, I didn't quite catch that.
3 apologies. I've just seen one on email. So we got Sally Newton, Norma Simons, and Charlie Rowley. So it's 3.
Okay, thank you very much.
And I believe Judith Ranger was absent. I've not heard anything. I don't think I've seen her on the screen unless I missed something. Okay.
All right, thanks very much. We'll move on to the minutes of the meeting held on the 21st of October. This is on pages 7 to 55. And Councillor Kemp raised a point that, Peter, you've acknowledged. Peter, do you want to just tell us about what that is?
Yeah, very briefly. Yeah. On the public questions on pages 7 to 23 and 23 to 34, there's a whole section that's duplicated. In other words, the entire minute's there twice. So it's a question of deleting the second half of it, really.
Okay,
Otherwise,
thank you very much. I suppose it's good that we don't all have paper copies, otherwise we'd say what
yes,
a waste that was.
with
Okay.
an amendment, we have a proposal.
Yes, we proposer for the minutes.
Councillor Hazy, I'm happy to propose the minutes with the necessary amendments as recommended.
Thank you. Councillor Goodeve.
I'm happy to second.
Thank you. Peter, do we need to vote on them or just assume
A vote, please. Yes.
we have to have a vote? Okay, so if you could use your green tick for confirming those minutes, or the red cross if you're against for any reason. Right, those are carried. Thank you very much indeed. Before I go to item 4, just harking back to the Isabel Hospice, thank you to those of you that have already donated to the East Herts bit of the charity where we're sending on the money to Isabel Hospice. Much appreciated, those have already done that, but the rest of you, perhaps if you wouldn't mind doing that tomorrow, that would be great. Item 4, declarations of interest. Do we have any declarations of interest? No. Okay. I've got Councillor Cutting has got a blue hand up. Councillor Cutting, is that?
Thank you, Chairman. It's just something that may help members donate. I've had 5 attempts today to donate to you online. I've successfully just done it this evening. When you put the sort code and the bank account number in, online banking automatically recognises the account and tells you at the bottom of the screen that this recognises this is a business account. What it doesn't tell you is that the full name of the account is East Hertfordshire District Council. We all tend to quote East Herts District Council. So you will not be able to enter the reference, which is Chairman Isabel Hospice, unless you've put in East Hertfordshire District Council. I know it sounds petty, but it took me 5 times to have a go, and I eventually donated money to you, and more than £5 you'll be happy to know. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much, Councillor Cutting. Thank you for pursuing with that. And that's a really good point. So if you are looking for it, it's East Hertfordshire District Council account. Thank you. Right, on now to item 5. We have a petition on page 57. And this is relating to the development generally known as Old River Lane. Been received from change.org. Members are reminded that the lead petitioners are permitted to address the council for up to 3 minutes, after which the relevant executive member will respond to the petition. There is no provision for any general debate by members, but local ward members may also speak on the subject of the petition if they wish to do so. And if they put their blue hand up, if they feel that they do want to speak about it. Can I invite Calvin Corner, Mr. Corner, to present your e-petition, please? And you have up to 3 minutes to speak. Mr. Corner.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the council. This e-petition is not necessarily in the form that I would have wished to have ideally presented it to the council. But the e-petition was the most practicable way of raising our concerns and those of Bishop Stortford residents in the present very unusual circumstances. And it is these circumstances, the twin challenges of the pandemic and Brexit, that prompted us to raise the petition. The petition, as members will see, calls on the council to halt the development of the proposed Old River Lane scheme for the publication of the business case and the organisation of public consultation. On the first of these issues or clauses, we welcome the decision of the executive to pause the plans for Old River Lane in order to carry out a major review of the development. And like all residents of Bishop Stortford, we will await the outcome of this review in the new year. However, even in the light of this review, I contend that the latter 2 clauses of the petition remain relevant. And I wish to make a few comments outlining why it is important that they are considered when the review is carried out. Openness in the conduct of the review and indeed presentation of the business case will, I'm sure, do much to restore the council's standing among the residents of Bishop Stortford. Members here may well be aware of the long and contentious history of proposed developments from the Old River Lane site. Whilst the revealing of commercially sensitive information may not be possible, and I understand that, the cost benefit and financial assessments on which the eventual scheme is based would benefit from being presented to the public in a clear and open manner to avoid such contention in the future. Furthermore, as part of the review, there should also be extensive public consultation. The Old River Lane site, situated as it is between the historic hub of Bishop Stortford and the Castle Gardens, represents a prominent location and one that is of great importance to the residents of the town. Furthermore, this council's investment in the Old River Lane site presents a major opportunity for East Herts to help address the many needs of Bishop Stortford, needs that have arisen from the town's rapid growth and indeed, in some instances, have been exacerbated by the current interlocking crises of COVID-19 and the impending Brexit. In order to ensure that any investment makes the greatest positive benefit, there needs to be extensive consultation with the residents of the town.
Got half a minute, Mr. Horner.
The leader of the council was quoted in last week's Bishop Stortford Independent saying that the purpose of the review was to make sure the decisions we make are right for our communities. And this is absolutely the correct objective. But a vital means to reach this outcome is to obtain the input of those communities through a robust programme of consultation. So in conclusion, I would like to thank you once again for receiving this petition and ask you to consider these points as you conduct the review in the new year. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, Mr. Horner. And we'll ask Executive Member Jeffrey Williamson to actually respond to this. Councillor Williamson.
Thank you, Chairman, and thank you, Mr. Horner. We've heard your comments this evening, and as a member of the Old River Lane Delivery Board and executive member of the council, I acknowledge receipt of your petition on behalf of the council. Elements of the Old River Lane project will come before the council at its meeting on the 13th of January, and we will be considering the full business case in March. A substantial amount of public consultation has already taken place, and further consultation will be undertaken as and when we move to the master planning stage. But thank you for the petition.
Thank you very much, Councillor Williamson. And local ward member, one of the local ward members is Councillor Myoni Goldspink, who wants to speak on this. Councillor Goldspink.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, as one of the two ward members, I would like to speak about this. I'd like to comment on this petition. I fully support this petition. Now, I do realise that the first two elements of it have already been answered, in that the plans for the site have now been halted and that the 500-seat theatre will now not be built, and that there is therefore no business case to be publicised at the moment. However, the third element of the petition is the request for a full public consultation with the residents and businesses of Bishop Stortford so as to ascertain the community's views. This request is now extremely apt and pertinent. The Old River Lane site is a very important site in the heart of Bishop Stortford, and there is now a golden opportunity to use it in such a way as to bring great benefit to the whole town, to do something really good for the community. I therefore strongly support this call for full public consultation, asking the residents what they would like to see on this site. I would also like to request the executive that at least 5 councillors from across the political spectrum should be involved in designing this consultation and in the framing of any questions. The questions should be open-ended and should allow scope for many different and imaginative ideas to be contributed. So I do hope that this can be set up as soon as possible. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Goldspink, and we'll of course hear more about this in our extraordinary council meeting in January and then again in March. We'll now move on to public questions, item number 6 on the agenda, and David Royal of the Bishop Stortford Climate Change Group has a question. Mr. Royal, good evening to you.
Good evening, Chairman. Good evening, everybody. Thank you for allowing my public question, which is on behalf of the Bishop Stortford Climate Group. And the question is to Councillor Jan Goody, Executive Member for Planning and Growth. Several major housing developments have been approved and are now being built. Both physical quality and the energy performance of the schemes clearly require careful monitoring. This would ensure compliance with planning conditions and statements of intent forming part of the planning permission documentation. There are 2 separate but overlapping fields of monitoring. One is planning permission monitoring to check developers are complying with approved drawings and conditions. 2 is building control monitoring to check whether energy efficiency targets are exceeding building regulations part L. So could you please clarify what arrangements are in place for Firstly, early and regular monitoring of the build-out of new homes against the permissions granted in order to provide assurance on the delivered design, quality and energy sources of housing in new developments, and to impose any necessary enforcement steps in good time to influence the rest of the development. Secondly, building control service monitoring compliance with stated energy performance targets. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Royal. Councillor Jan Goodeve to respond to that one, please.
Thank you, Chairman. As indicated in the question, there are several major developments that have been consented and are currently under construction. These developments must be constructed according to the consented plans that have been submitted to Planning Service and any building control service supplier, respectively. The duty for ensuring that development undertaken complies fully with what has been consented ultimately rests with the developer. This includes ensuring that details relating to any planning conditions have been submitted on time and are fully adhered to. In order to assist with the monitoring of development, the Planning Service has, through the use of planning conditions, sought to control some aspects of construction work that does not involve the use of personnel. For instance, conditions have been imposed that require a developer to build a sample board of elevations of the structure on site. And once this has been approved, it is to be maintained on site so that it can be compared to what has been constructed. In addition to this, there is a compliance officer resource within the Planning Service in order to assist with the monitoring of developments on the ground as they are built out, and options to extend this are currently being considered. Planning conditions regarding energy, sustainability matters are normally submitted to the Planning Service for approval. And once approved, it is expected that they will be implemented as consented. There is an overlap with building regulations on this matter, as the building control officers will supervise the implementation of these measures, including testing and finally approving their installation with the appropriate certification. However, in the case of a scheme whereby the Planning Service has agreed a scheme that exceeds approved document Part L, it would be expected that this is the plan that the developer is working to in their submission to building control. Developers can select which building control service they use to supervise their construction works, and some choose to use approved inspectors rather than Hertfordshire Building Control. However, this does not alter the requirements of the developer to comply with what has been approved at the planning stage. In terms of planning enforcement, if there is a concern that new developments have not been built in accordance with approved plans and planning conditions, then this would need to be reported to the planning enforcement team, who would investigate the concern, and depending on the nature of the breach, would consider whether it was expedient to the public interest to take enforcement action, having regard to the level of harm caused. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, Councillor Goodeve. Mr. Royal, do you have a supplementary question? Sorry, yeah, you're still on mute.
My apologies. I was hoping there might be a mention of monitoring visits, but I take it that this is not planned. Such visits might involve, for example, planner, architect, and maybe importantly, a town or parish council representative. The latter having been closely involved in the planning application process and for whom quality and compliance have a great deal of importance.
Councillor Goodeve, do you have any
Sorry, I struggled to hear what you said there, Mr. Royal, but
yeah, it was cutting out a bit. I think you said, yes, I think, Mr. Royal, can you just repeat the bit that you said at the beginning? You wanted to hear something and then we lost the word.
I was asking, there was no mention in the response about any planned monitoring visits, which might include, for example, a planner, an architect, and a town or parish council representative. And the latter having been closely involved in the planning application process and who attach a great deal of importance to quality and compliance.
Councillor Goody, do you want to comment on that?
I would suspect that it would be considered inappropriate for a town or parish council to become involved, but I can certainly check with officers on that point.
And then what you'll come back to, Mr. Royal.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Royal, for your question. And we now go on to agenda item 7, which I think is in the supplementary pack, and it's members' questions. And our first one is from Councillor Ben Crystal.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. More than a year after declaring a climate motion, East Herts Council still has no visible message on its homepage of its website, giving residents advice on measures that they can adopt to reduce their carbon footprint. Given that East Herts Council plays a leading role as influencer in the district, and the fact that adding a page of guidance on the council website would have minimal cost implications, isn't the executive member for environmental sustainability concerned that East Herts Council is missing out on a simple but crucial step in providing its residents with actionable guidance on cutting their own and the district's carbon emissions?
Thank you, Councillor Crystal. And this is for Councillor McAndrew, Executive Member for Environmental Sustainability. Councillor McAndrew.
Thank you, Chairman. Can I thank Councillor Crystal for his question, advance warning of his question. East Herts Council recognises the important role it can play as a purveyor of trusted, impartial information on environmental sustainability, which can help residents to reduce their own carbon footprints. The Council's website has in fact carried a wealth of information for some time, although the problem, as highlighted by Councillor Crystal's question, has been that the information has not been as easy to find as it should be. I am therefore very pleased to announce that today the Council has launched a totally updated environmental sustainability webpage, which links together all the Council's existing and additional information. It is now far easier to access practical guidance and the steps residents can take to reduce their carbon footprints, including advice on home insulation, tips on maximising home energy efficiency, how to access national and local grants, and the ways to get involved with the Council's sustainability work. The page can be found on www.eastherts.gov.uk/sustainability. This is just the start. We have recently employed a sustainability project and policy officer for 6 months, and having revamped our website, she will now be improving our overall communications on sustainability issues. Given the Council's leading role as an influencer, we must think carefully about promoting any particular service providers or signposting to other parties' personal or business carbon footprint calculators. We are aware, however, that some other councils are providing this kind of useful information, and so our new officer has already started identifying the options for plugging any obvious gaps in our website. We believe that upgrading and publicising our website will help strengthen the ways East Herts Council can support local residents to take the necessary steps to reduce the overall carbon footprint of our district. My thanks for the question, which has allowed me to promote this new page. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much indeed. And Councillor Crystal, do you have a supplementary at all?
I do, yes. I'll try and be quick. Thank you very much, Councillor McAndrew, for your answer. I'm delighted that the page has been put up. That's great news. And I just had a thought about maybe one way that perhaps we could promote it, if I can ask you. Next May, Her Majesty the Queen is launching the Queen's Green Canopy project, which is a nationwide tree planting programme to celebrate her 70 years in service. So I wonder whether you think it might be possible to use the Green Canopy programme in May as an ideal project with which to launch this new page to the public. I just wondered what you thought.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. I think that's sort of a good idea. If you can email me the details, we can look to see how we can actually do that, if we can do it. I certainly won't rule it out at this stage, but just for everybody, I've just put in chats how you can get onto the new website. So if you click on that, you should go straight to the new website. So yeah, if you send me an email, then we can move forward from there. And I hope you're impressed with the website. It will evolve. This is only stage 1. Stage 2 and 3 are yet to come.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
Thanks
Chairman.
very much indeed. Question 2 now, and unfortunately Councillor Norma Simons can't be with us this evening. She's not very well. So Councillor Bob Deering is going to ask the question on her behalf. Councillor Deering.
Thank you very much, Chairman. I should just say that I'm very pleased to ask this question. My family does quite a lot of work with homeless people, so it's an issue that's close to my family's heart. But give credit to Norma. So this is Councillor Norma Simmons' question. I am very concerned about the impact that COVID-19 may have on our homeless in the district. Losing your home often through no fault of your own and at any time in your life is totally devastating. What is East Herts Council doing to support families and individuals at this very challenging time?
Thank you very much indeed, Bob Deering. And Councillor Peter Boylan is Executive Member for Neighbourhoods. Councillor Boylan.
Thank you, Chairman, and good evening, everybody. I'd like to thank Councillor Simons for prior notice of this question. As Councillor Simons has stated in her question, becoming homeless can be totally devastating for individuals and for families at any time. The COVID-19 pandemic has only added to this devastation. Many of you may be aware that during the first national lockdown in March, this council used government funding to quickly secure hotel accommodation in Stevenage for rough sleepers and those with nowhere else to go other than sleeping on friends' sofas. What is perhaps not so well known is that the council's help has continued once government funding has ceased back in the summer. Of the 24 people with complex histories of entrenched rough sleeping housed in the hotel, we've secured longer-term housing for 11. We're continuing to provide temporary accommodation for another 6 as we continue to support them, with the remaining 7 finding their own housing solutions. In addition, this year, we will again provide revenue support to the winter night shelter in Bishop Stortford, which is due to reopen in a COVID-secure way in January. Even without the COVID-19 pandemic, high local house prices and private rents have seen increasing numbers of people turning to the council for help. So even while the government has put a temporary halt on evictions, the council continues to help people facing homelessness due to the breakdown of relationships or the need to escape domestic abuse. Our contract with the Survivors Against Domestic Abuse Support Service, operated by Stevenage Borough Council, which started in the spring, has supported 12 local families over its first 6 months. With increasing numbers turning to the council, we've had to make more use of bed and breakfast hotels for temporary accommodation, typically outside of this district. On average, there were just 5 households in bed and breakfast accommodation at any one time during 18-19, but now there's an average of about 21, excluding the additional need resulting from the coronavirus emergency. I'm particularly pleased, therefore, that the council recently purchased a building in Stansted Abbots to be known as the Rectory, to provide 13 self-contained one-bedroom and studio flats. This accommodation is not only far more suitable than hotel rooms, but provides much needed accommodation on the western side of our district to complement the other 11 temporary accommodation flats the council already owns just outside of Bishop Stortford. To add to this, the council has been successful in its bid to government to convert 3 flats into 6 one-bedroom and studio flats, specifically for those making the move from rough sleeping towards a more permanent home again. We will also use government funding for a specialist support officer for 3 years, working with other agencies to provide a wraparound service to improve the health and welfare and future access to accommodation and employment for these former rough sleepers. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Boylan. Do you have a supplementary, Councillor Deary?
Just a couple of words, if I may, Chairman. I'd just like to thank Councillor Peter Boylan for that absolutely excellent report. I think your leadership on this issue, Peter, has been exceptional. And I think this is one of the areas where I think everybody involved in this Zoom meeting tonight can all absolutely come together and be very proud of the work that East Herts District Council is doing. And thank you very much indeed. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Deary. And Councillor Ian Devonshire has our third question. Councillor Devonshire.
Thank you, Chairman. My question is to Councillor Jeffrey Williamson. The question is, the hospitality sector throughout this country is suffering badly from the economic effects due to the restrictions being imposed to protect the public from COVID-19. Can the executive member please tell us how this authority is helping to support the hospitality sector, including hotels, bed and breakfast and leisure accommodation that have been under some form of restriction this year since March? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Williamson, please.
Thank you. Thank you to Councillor Devonshire for raising this very important issue. And I agree, the hospitality sector is one of the worst hit industries globally and locally. Indeed, Visit England estimate that there has been a 48% drop in domestic tourism this year, and international visits are unlikely to return to pre-pandemic levels before 2023 at the earliest. One of the ways we support this sector is through our relationship with Visit Herts, who provide destination management services for East Herts and across the county. They have been focusing on providing advice and guidance to businesses through regular updates and series of virtual workshops and seminars. They're also managing a crowdfunding platform which is supported by the Herts LEP. This allows businesses to outline a new initiative to help them diversify and stay relevant amongst COVID-19 restrictions. The public are able to pledge their support, and if the business hits its target, it is topped up with LEP funding. So far, 5 businesses from within East Herts have put ideas forward. An example being Stand and Calling, who are offering rewards and experiences for next year's festival, assuming it can go ahead, of course. By getting people to crowdfund, they have managed to raise £88,000 so far, which will certainly help them with their cash flow challenges. So this shows how we can support these industries by getting all involved. And I would urge fellow councillors to look at the crowdfunding site if they've not already done so. But very importantly, we have been providing direct financial support, of course. The government has provided a number of grant schemes to support businesses suffering the impact of COVID-19, which we are administering, in addition to the variety of other support measures for business detailed on government websites. In the first round of discretionary grants from March, the council specifically supported bed and breakfast establishments, which pay council tax rather than just business rates. More recently, the lockdown produced a mandatory scheme called the Local Restrictions Support Grant Closed Addendum for those businesses liable for business rates which were mandated to close. This will include those in the hospitality, leisure and accommodation sectors that fell into those definitions. A further mandatory grant scheme called a Local Restrictions Support Grant Sector is also enacted at this time for businesses such as nightclubs, which have been ordered not to open since March. A discretionary scheme was also announced called the Additional Restrictions Grant Scheme, which runs until March 2022. The Council is using this opportunity to prioritise in the first tranche of grants those businesses which it considers may have fallen outside of the mainstream grants previously offered. And this is particularly helpful for those who supply to or manufacture for the hospitality and events industries. Specific support is also targeted at taxi drivers and market traders, and provision is made for those businesses who were mandated to close during the lockdown but did not qualify for the main lockdown grant, as they do not have a liability for business rates. As we enter Tier 2 on the 2nd of December, a further discretionary grant scheme called Local Restriction Support Grant Open became available, which is directed at businesses that are not legally required to close, but which are severely impacted by the localised restrictions on socialising that have been put in place. The government is encouraging councils to prioritise those in the hospitality, leisure and accommodation sectors. A further mandatory scheme called Local Restriction Support Grant Closed is also available for those businesses mandated to stay closed for as long as we remain in Tier 2 or indeed should we ever move into Tier 3. This again will support those businesses in this sector that have to remain closed. And finally, for the moment at least, we have the Christmas support payment of £1,000 for wet service pubs, i.e. those that derive less than 50% of its income from food service.
Right, thank you very much, Councillor Williamson. That was comprehensive. Councillor Devonshire, do you have a supplementary?
Yes, please, Chairman. My supplementary is, are this council actively going out to seek hospitality companies so they can inform them of the grants and fundings that are available to them?
Councillor Williamson.
Thank you. Well, yes, indeed we are. In terms of communicating the grants programme, comms have been promoting the schemes via social media, concentrating on LinkedIn and Facebook. We have also used existing business networks, including the Chambers of Commerce, Bishop Stortford Bid, Hertford Hub and Visit Hearts, to make sure we are getting to as many businesses as possible. In addition, the business rates team have been actively contacting businesses that may be eligible by both email and telephone. We do want to make sure that every eligible business is receiving the money they are entitled to. So if any councillor here knows of businesses that aren't aware of these schemes, I would encourage you please to direct them to the council website and the application form therein.
Thank you very much. And Councillor Goldspink, your question, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It is to Councillor Jan Goodeve, Executive Member for Planning and Growth. Is it true, as was reported recently in a local newspaper, that the builders of the new houses on the old goods yard site in Bishop Stortford have abandoned the carbon dioxide reduction prediction of 24% and have now settled on a tiny 3.2% reduction? The original prediction was included in the overall planning application for the site, which was granted with conditions. A revised prediction for 3.2% was submitted in 2019. I believe that this has not yet been approved by the council, but the building works are nonetheless going ahead. Can the executive member please tell me what level of carbon dioxide reduction has been accepted, and is it compatible with this council's stated ambition of
You muted yourself at the end there, but I think we caught most of that, Councillor Goldspink. Councillor Goodeve, do you want to respond?
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, I'd like to thank Councillor Goldspink for the advance notice of the question. The planning application documents submitted for the redevelopment of the goods yard site indicated that a carbon dioxide reduction of around 24% was achievable at this site. However, Since the grant of planning consent, part of the site has been sold on to a developer, Bellway Homes, who are intending to implement parts of the planning permission, blocks A1 to 5, which comprises of two commercial units and 149 residential units. Bellway Homes have proposed a lower carbon dioxide reduction level of 3.2%. This has been sent to specialist consultants for review, and discussions are ongoing with the developer with the aim of seeking to improve this carbon dioxide reduction level. Given this, I can confirm that the current offer from Bellway Homes has not been accepted, but we do need to be mindful that the council's planning policy is not prescriptive on this matter, in that no specific target level is outlined. Policy CC2 requires developments to achieve standards above and beyond the requirements of the building regulations, approved document L. The current offer exceeds the requirements of the building regulations and therefore technically complies with the council's policy CC2, notwithstanding given the previous offer of 24%. And whilst being mindful of overall development viability, as outlined in the National Planning Policy Framework, it is considered appropriate to seek to encourage the developer to be more aspirational on this matter.
Thank you very much indeed, Councillor Goody. Do you have a supplementary, Councillor Goldsby?
Yes, please, Chairman. Yes. I'm interested to hear that this reduced percentage ambition has not yet been accepted. Are you able to tell me when the council will make the judgment, and what is happening that the building is going on as we speak? It is still proceeding. Should it not be halted whilst the council decides whether to accept this lower level, or do we just have to accept it and hope that everything will turn out all right? It seems to be most unsatisfactory that they can still carry on with the building.
I mean, all I can say is that discussions are still ongoing and that the conditions have not been discharged.
Okay, thank you very much indeed. We'll take the last question, but if the executive member responding could keep her answer fairly brief, if that's possible, that would be very good. So we've gone past our 15-minute allotted time. Councillor Tim Page.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. I appreciate that my question overlaps with a previous public question, but has perhaps a different particular focus. Buyers of new build properties in my ward have brought alleged building control breaches to my attention. Building control compliance is often undertaken by approved inspectors who are engaged by developers. Could the portfolio holder for planning and growth clarify how this work is monitored and enforced across the district, and if the enforcement regime also covers compliance with planning conditions?
Thank you very much. Councillor Goody.
Thank you, Chairman. I'd like to thank Councillor Page for the advance notice of the question, and I think it's an important question so that people can have a greater understanding of how the system works. There are two parts to the question. The first part relates to building control and how this is monitored and enforced across the district. And the second part relates to planning enforcement and compliance with planning conditions. Building regulations approval works differently from planning permission and is open to competition, so people can apply to any local authority building control service or approved inspector for building regulations approval. This means that whilst Hertfordshire Building Control provide the local authority statutory building control service across Hertfordshire, their services are not necessarily used by everyone, and building regulations for some new developments can be signed off by approved inspectors. Unfortunately, if there is a problem with the buildings on a development which has been signed off by an approved inspector, then Hertfordshire Building Control cannot necessarily step in unless they receive a complaint that shows that the approved inspectors recklessly issued completion certificates. Proving this can be very difficult, although not impossible. This means that any concerns about compliance with building regulations needs to be made directly to the approved inspector and Construction Industry Council of Improved Inspectors Register, who govern approved inspectors. They have a complaints procedure and residents should complain through the approved inspector to them. If there are specific snagging issues with new properties relating to minor faults and finishing off, then this would be a matter for the house builder to resolve rather than anything more significant relating to compliance with building regulations. In terms of planning enforcement and compliance with planning conditions, if there is a concern that new developments have not been built in accordance with approved plans and planning conditions, then this would need to be reported to the planning enforcement team, who would investigate the concern and, depending on the nature of the breach, would consider whether it was expedient in the public interest to take enforcement action, having regard to the level of harm caused.
Thank you very much, Councillor Goodeve. Do you have a supplementary, Councillor Page?
Yes, Chairman. Yes, please. Is the portfolio holder content that on-site monitoring of building regulations is sufficiently objective and robust?
I think that's a broader question, Tim. I think that's something that applies not just to East Herts. I think that's something that will apply up and down the country now that approved inspectors are now permitted rather than local authority building control.
Thank you very much. Let's move on to item number 8.
Thank you.
Thank you. On to the agenda, which is on page 61, the executive report. This report relates to the meeting of the executive on the 24th of November. Can I invite the leader of the council to present her report and the recommendations within it? Linda Hazy.
Thank you, Chairman, and good evening to everybody. It's the end of the year, and I think it is a time of reflection. I think it's most extraordinary that we've all had to learn a different language, really. You're on mute. Can you unmute, please? Because we can't hear you. Is fairly common, even after we've all been doing this for the last 8 months or so. We also get lots of text saying, can you send me the links? I can't get into the meeting. We've all had frozen meetings where you have no idea who's actually watching you or what you're saying is of any relevance to anybody whatsoever. We've had meetings where we've had cats, dogs, puppies, small children, big children. And if you remember on the very first council which we Zoomed, my husband coming into the kitchen to cook his dinner and then breaking a plate. And a recent Zoom I was on, we had a canary. So, and that was a senior member of Herts County Council officers. So we're never going to let him forget that one, are we? So we've had lots of strange language. We've had some good things come out of Zoom or Teams. We've had much greater interaction in our meetings. I ran a webinar earlier this morning on working with vulnerable people across Hertfordshire, and there were over 100 people in it. Now that would never have happened in the old days under normal activities. And we've also all learned how to wave. I think to begin with, we were all a bit sort of embarrassed by waving at people on the screen, but actually we now have all our own little waves as to how we say goodbye to people and how we say hello to people. What do we miss? We miss the hugs, I think. We miss the chat over coffee. We miss the interaction with us as professional human beings. And I think we miss the ability to really get to know people. I now know what the inside of quite a lot of people's houses look like, but I've no idea how their life has been in the last year. So this new COVID has produced some good community work, as we've heard earlier from the CPRE awards. But I do hope very soon that we can start getting back to what used to be a normal. I think we all need, the vaccine is coming, and I'm sure, I don't think some of you are already on the list to have been done or will be done in the next couple of weeks. So I'd like to thank all the staff. It has been quite extraordinary what they've had to do in the last 8 months. We've tried to tell them over Christmas to turn all these electronic devices off, and I would suggest to councillors that you do the same. Not that I ever behave in the way that I say and ask other people to behave, but in this particular instance, I think it's important because everyone's starting to look a bit drawn, to be quite honest, and the weather doesn't help. So thank you to all the staff for everything that the most extraordinary things that they have had to do in the last 8 months. And just finally, one fantastic piece of news. Congratulations, Louis. You've just become a father. So please put your microphone on and unmute, please unmute and tell us the name of the new baby in our area.
Wave her at you.
Oh, we're going to get a picture. Oh!
Baby Nora, who was born on the 29th of November. And she's keeping us awake at night. So
I'm sure.
Who's doing the 1 o'clock feeds?
My wife. I do the 9 a.m. shift though.
Congratulations.
Yeah.
Congratulations, Louis.
Congratulations.
So,
Congratulations.
yes. And I think actually talking with other people who've had babies or adolescent children before they went to university, it's become an extraordinary time where they have been able to spend time with their children, which they wouldn't normally get. So look upon it as a good thing to enjoy. So thank you, Chairman. That's my introduction to the paper, to the executive report. There are a number of agenda items which do need approval through council. The first one of which is the Sustainable Travel Town bids, which is proposed by Councillor McAndrew. And I don't know if Councillor McAndrew wishes to say a few words on this.
Councillor McAndrew?
I think everything's there on the 2 appendices, and yeah, it's as it says on the 2 recommendations.
Okay, so that's 8A, isn't it? Right.
Yes,
okay.
It's 8A and it's recommendations A and B on page 62.
Any comments or questions on this? Councillor Bell.
I wholeheartedly support the idea behind this document. I do have some reservations coming from a more rural community where public transport makes accessing towns by any means other than a car quite difficult. But I do believe that in general, this report does help us go some way towards making East Herts a more carbon neutral community and reducing pollution on our roads. So in that sense, I do support this motion. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Bell. Councillor Goldsmith.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I found this a very difficult proposition because for several reasons. I do strongly support the idea of a sustainable travel town. And I think the County Council's description of a town in which everyone walks, cycles and uses public transport is a most attractive picture. However, I do think there are serious flaws in the detailed plans and programme. Firstly, there's no mention at all of how the public transport would be provided. the programme states explicitly that there is no allocated budget. Now, if there is no public transport for people to use, they will have no choice, but they will have to use their private cars instead. And without sustainable transport, how on earth can a town possibly be a sustainable travel town? The name really is a misnomer, possibly a sham. So that is my first difficulty with what is proposed for these towns. Secondly, the criteria or conditions for becoming a sustainable travel town contain some really drastic changes to the planning requirements. New houses would have to be built at a higher density and without any parking spaces at all, or at the very least with reduced parking standards. These car-free developments would make life very difficult for people who need to own their own cars. Now, I'm perfectly content to try to encourage people to only use their cars when this is really necessary. But I'm not content to make it almost impossible for someone to own a car simply because there is nowhere to park it. Such a situation would restrict people's choices and would make life very difficult for many people and for their families. So for these two reasons, the absence of provision of public transport and drastic changes to our district council planning requirements, I'm afraid that with great reluctance, I cannot support these two recommendations. And with regret, I will be voting against them. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Goldspeed. Councillor Ben Crystal.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted to speak in defence of the Sustainable Travel Town programme. I appreciate there's great concern about lots of free parking in towns and developments without spaces for parking. But I think you've got to look at the package as a whole, and it does clearly include improved bus services, improved train services, bus priority infrastructure, improved cycle and walking access to towns, and park and rides. And so if you take those things together and they're put in a long-term basis, then I think it's very, very clear that you can arrive within a couple of years, if those measures are successful, at a point where you can start to withdraw free parking in towns, 30-minute parking in towns, and perhaps reduce the amount of parking on developments that are close to public transport. So I kind of think this maybe has been framed in the wrong way. So I think we've got to be very careful to dismiss this out of hand based on perhaps incomplete knowledge or misconceptions. So I do support that we support it in principle. I have a slightly stronger support than in principle, but I just wanted to make that point.
Thank you very much, Councillor Crystal. Councillor Chris Wilson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good evening, everyone. Like Councillor Goldsbank, I have some difficulties with this proposal, and it's strange for me to say that because I'm very much a supporter of sustainable transport and indeed modal shift. And I think it's fair to praise the general direction that we have now at the County Council and in this council to some extent as well. I think Councillor McAndrew does have a genuine passion for sustainable transport and to do modal shift. It's really important that we're starting to do that. I think it's also important to think about the context of this. At present, we have many developments, burgeoning developments in Bishop Stortford and many to come. Also in Silversworth and Gilston, that will use the same area of infrastructure in many cases. So if we do nothing to change the pattern of transport behaviour that people have at the moment, we will get nothing except gridlock. So it's clear that something has to change. It's unfortunate, in my opinion, that has happened, that we have this many developments in the same place. And of course, that was put through the district plan before I and many others were members of the council. However, that is where we are. I also think we've had years and years of neglect in Bishop Stortford and the district as a whole, and most particularly in villages in terms of public transport, cycle infrastructure, we're saying we've got to do this now at a point when we could have done it at any time in the last 20 years. And indeed, I advocated for that before I was a councillor and before it was really very political. It was clear to me, I've lived in Poland, in Scotland, in Northern Ireland. This is the worst place I've lived, in Bishop Stortford, for public transport and infrastructure for cycling and walking. So this should not be news, and this should not be happening now. It should have happened before. So the problem we've had is we've had underinvestment in these buses, cyclepaths, etc., particularly in villages, as I say. And I'm still of the view that the most important thing is incentivisation and investment. And I think, to reference slightly what Councillor Crystal was saying, that we need to make sure of the timing of this. So what we can't do is have draconian measures before we have other possibilities and other ways people can get about. This is particularly the case for villages who have appalling public transport at the moment. If we were also to remove free parking spaces in towns in, say Hertford or Bishop Stortford or elsewhere in East Herts, but they're not being removed elsewhere, then we risk people from villages going to different town centres and losing some of the business the High Street definitely and desperately needs. It needs to be more integrated. We need to talk to other councils, whether that's Hertfordshire County Council doing so or ourselves. And at the moment, sadly, we do not have the infrastructure for some vital journeys. So people have to go to Stevenage, they have to go to Epping, and they have to go to Cambridge. It is not easy to get to all those places by public transport, and people have to get to those places. Without that, we can't tell people to abandon their cars entirely, which I'm not thinking this does. More specifically, if you reduce parking spaces in new developments, again, without anything infrastructure to show an alternative, that seems to me overly draconian and also unfair to people to do so.
Right, thank you very much indeed, Councillor Wilson.
Sorry,
I'm sorry, I apologise. I thought you.
Sorry, that's okay. So ultimately, to make this work, we don't just need investment in public transport in towns. We need sustainable transport in villages. Having said all this, I do think that at the moment we vitally have to change, and to do something is better than do nothing. So I think I'm reluctantly going to support this motion.
Thank you, Councillor Wilson. Councillor Alex Curtis.
Thank you, Chairman. I think that some important points have been raised so far by the opposition members, though I would like to also highlight that the executive is recommending that this council supports, in principle, the aspirations of the policies. The policy which mentions, yeah, it's LTP4, the one for sustainable travel towns. And I think that's quite crucial here, in that we're saying that we support the aspirations, that we support the rights of towns to bid for this status if they choose to do so, once they're aware of what's involved. So in a way, we're putting this decision in the hands of local communities, and I think that's the right thing to do. I don't think anyone here today is going to disagree that we have to make sure that when we're encouraging people to not use cars, that we have the infrastructure in place and enable them to do that. I represent a village ward myself. I'm well aware of I'm not actually a driver at the moment myself for health reasons, though. So again, there I'm somebody that perhaps uses public transport more frequently than others. I know the challenges of using public transport in our local area are extensive. And this is something I think which does need more attention from the county council, especially in that the county council has sort of on paper has the power to, or responsibility to, improve infrastructure on all these fronts. But like many other county councils around the country, its track record of being able to deliver the improvements has been more limited compared to similar local government structures in other comparable countries. So yes, we need to make sure that we get the infrastructure in place, as has already been said, for alternative forms of travel before we move towards having the status for towns. Though importantly, I just want to mention the need for us to have the No, what with the towns? Oh my word! Sorry, my mind just went. That was, sorry, I just completely gone. I have to check my blood
What you were
sugar, I
going to
think.
say, we often
No,
do
I
that.
have to
Don't
check my
worry.
blood sugar. I think it's just beeped a moment ago. But
I think we got the gist of what you're
yeah,
saying.
it's the sorry about that. I'm gonna have to please excuse me for a second. I'll be back in a second. Sorry.
No, that's fine. That's fine. That's no problem. We'll go to Councillor Carolyn Redfern now.
Thank you. I am very torn on this. I really want to approve it, but I just feel I can't, particularly on those specific points that are mentioned in the document here. B, to approve the cessation of the following recommendations within the parking task and finish group report about improving accessibility of short stay parking. So it's to reduce, well, or to leave it the same for the time being, but I just think that it is creating such difficulty for people, particularly those people who come in from remote villages with no bus services. Watton Stone, in section being a case in point, people drive to Watton Stone, which is a village, to catch a train, to use sustainable transport to go into London. Why can we not support them to do that? We can't expect people to cycle through country lanes in the dark in the winter to get a train. So if we stop them parking at Watton Stone, then they're not going to use the trains at all. They're going to drive further in and park somewhere else. It just seems that it's not logical, joined up thinking. And the letter C, the point C, the council challenged station car park operators to reduce their charges to reflect closer the all-day charge in East Herts Town Centre station. What a good recommendation. How can
I'm sorry, Chairman, I'm not quite sure, but I think Councillor Redfern is talking about a different paper. At the moment, we're talking about sustainable travel town bids. We're not on the review of outcome of parking.
No, but these in your sustainable policy, haven't you said that we're going to cease looking at these in the sustainable travel town bids?
Point of order, Chairman. We're on sustainable transport, not car parking.
Well, I just do think that I cannot really support this because it just becomes impossible for people to live. You know, if people live out in a village and they need a car for their work,
Okay,
and they can't park it.
You're basically saying it's not based on reality, really, on real.
I am basically saying it's not based on.
I understand, Councillor Redfern. Thank you. Councillor Ian Kemp.
Thank you, Chairman. I think one thing that is clear from all councillors of all parties are keen to see sustainable transport developed and encouraged, walking, cycle paths encouraged wherever possible. I think the point is that there is no one-size-fits-all solution. And a sustainable travel town is one possible way of achieving that policy. But it doesn't work for some towns. In particular, I think it's better suited for larger urbanized areas, and it seems quite inappropriate for country towns. It does cause potential difficulties. For example, if free half-hour parking is abolished, it makes it difficult for people to pop in either from a village or an outlying part of the town without public transport to collect something from chemist shop, an urgently needed prescription. And ideas such as park and ride schemes, which may be appropriate for large towns, don't seem very appropriate for places like Ware and Buntingford. And it makes no sense from a carbon footprint point of view to be running around empty buses back and forth rather than a short additional distance on a car journey. So I think it is important that it's down to individual towns to choose whether or not to go for the Sustainable Travel Towns initiative. Some towns have looked at this in our district and have concluded this wouldn't be right for us. But that does not mean that we are not committed in every possible way to sustainability and to improving our sustainable transport. I would say that I believe I can support the recommendation to council as it's made on the grounds that it gives the option for towns that do wish to become sustainable travel towns, while not forcing it on those that do not wish it and do not feel it appropriate.
Thank you, Councillor
Yes.
Kemp.
Point of order, Mr. Chairman. Could I just respond to something which Councillor Curtis said about this council is proposing to support these bids in principle? Could I say that if we do it in principle, the requirements for this council as supporting in Appendix A, the district councils will be required to sign up to fully delivering the following actions in order to sustainable travel town in their area could be considered into the programme. And these actions we would be required to sign up if we're going to support the bids include the big changes in the planning regulations. So although we were saying we're doing it in principle we are signing up to these big changes, and no town which wants to submit a bid, well, if a town wants to submit a bid, it has to show it's got the full support of its district council. So we would be signing up to these planning changes. Thank you.
We'll come to the executive member in a few minutes' time on that. I know a number of towns that have applied, a lot of them have put preconditions in. I think Stevenage has been accepted because they said no preconditions, we'll go with the whole of it. But others have, concerns, and perhaps we'll get an answer from Councillor McAndrew when we come to him. Councillor Jeff Jones.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. Following on Councillor Kemp's lines, really, I will be supporting the recommendation on sustainable travel towns because I do believe there probably are in East Herts towns where this sustainable travel town status would benefit them. We have 5 towns. In my ward, Buntingford, the smallest town in East Herts. I haven't pushed Buntingford forward as a sustainable travel town because I don't believe the criteria fits with what the residents would support, because it would have to obviously go to a consultation. The free parking, losing the free parking in the towns, that wouldn't get any support at all in Buntingford. We're very precious about our free parking. We get the highest amount of free parking in East Herts. We get a 90-minute free parking, which we benefit from. And the other criteria for new developments without any parking provision. Couldn't possibly support that in a town that has the highest car ownership in Hertfordshire, and without suitable public transport. So we have got very high car ownership, even though we probably fit the criteria of a sustainable travel town bid very well. But I've certainly never supported pushing that bid. But there are probably towns out of the 5 in East Herts where it suits. So for that reason, I will be supporting the recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Jones. Councillor Buckmaster.
Thank you, Chairman. I was actually hoping that all members would be a bit more positive about this. We are saying that we will support in principle those towns who want to go forward with it. I think there is an understanding that they are very tough objectives, but they are things that we need to face up to, and over time we need to achieve. This is just part of the picture. That, there are more wide-ranging objectives in terms of growth and transport planning, and I think it probably would help members if they were to look at the growth and transport plans, which are currently under consultation. It is a county council consultation. It's open until the end of January. But there are, if you look right across the district, there are a number of potential interventions that are listed in packages, which I think would go some way towards helping the communication between our communities. So it's just really to let you know about that. And I'm quite happy to forward you the links so that you can all take a look. And those of you who would wish to comment and respond, you're able to do so. Thank you, Chairman.
That might be useful, Councillor Buckmaster. Thank you very much indeed. Councillor Bob Deering.
Thank you very much, Chairman. I'd just like to say that I'm astonished that Councillors Goldspink and Redfern are not prepared to support recommendations A and B. I have to say, I wonder if they've actually read the precise recommendations. We're being asked to support in principle the aspirations of LTP4. We're not being asked to support detail. The motion or the recommendation is clearly deliberately worded to draw our attention to support in principle and to support aspirations. And as Councillor Kemp has said, this does not require any individual town to bid to be a sustainable travel town or not. We're not seeking to force anybody to do anything. And as Councillor Wilson and Crystal said earlier, do we really think that nothing needs to be done in relation to these issues? Something is better than nothing. I'm astonished that anybody cannot support this recommendation. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Deering. Can I ask Councillor... Sorry? Oh, right. Councillor Devonshire, you're, I think, seconding this, aren't you? Did you want to say anything?
Yeah, I mean, I completely agree with what Councillor Deering just said. I can't believe that people aren't supporting this. I strongly support the Sustainable Travel Town criteria. I strongly support the measures that are listed in the appendix. And I feel it's a real step forward. You know, we have to start somewhere, and this is a real major step forward. So I'm very, very happy to second this recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you. Now, Councillor McAndrew, if you'd like to wind up, please. You're on mute at the moment, Councillor McAndrew.
Yeah, so first of all, there's been 10 applications submitted to County Council for towns to become sustainable travel towns. Out of that 10, 3 have actually been selected to go forward to the next stage, where they sit down with County Council and see if they meet that criteria. The criteria isn't actually set in stone, and it will evolve over the following weeks and months and year. Yeah. So of that 3, 2 could fall out, then they'd look to see who else is maybe ready to sort of step into the breach. County Council will work with the towns to find money. Section 106, I think moving forward, the way that we deal with Section 106 will be more for sustainable transport or sustainable means. So the 3 from East Herts was Ware. That was an application from Ware. There was 1 from Hertford and 1 from Bishop Stortford, which Councillor Chris Wilson is part of that application. So I find it quite sort of, I can't understand where it's coming from. One minute we're submitting an application to become a sustainable travel town, the next minute he's not. Now, all these different park and rides, etc. Park and ride would be good for Watford, it may be good for St Albans, whatever, but it definitely won't be good for Bishop Stortford. And we've got to understand what is good. Then if one of our towns does get in the next rung of the ladder, there'll be a consultation with the members of the public about how it can be progressed. But we as a council have got to sort of make a commitment in principle for Ware, Hertford, Bishop Stortford, if they so wish to progress to become a sustainable travel town, we have got to support them. Take, for example, public transport. County Council are heavily involved at looking at on-demand buses. I believe it's been trialled in Watford at the moment. And that's coming to the fore more and more as the sort of weeks move forward. Ian Kemp, Councillor Kemp, said no size fits all. Well, that's right. I mean, there's only parts of this document that will be relevant to each of the individual towns. So there's a long way to go. And now for Hertford Vale and Bishop Stortford to get onto the next rung of the ladder, I think it'll probably be another year down the road. And there'll be time for reflection. How can we help them? What's got to be done? What can't be done? And how can we overcome that hurdles? Everybody here in this room this evening is 100% behind sustainability. LTP4, they want to see more walking, they want to see more cycling, they want to see more sort of public transport. But when it actually comes to sort of putting a line in the sand, we seem to take a step back. We don't have that courage. We don't have that conviction to move the next step forward. But I'll leave it there, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor McAndrew. Yeah. Which are the three towns, by the way, that are progressing to the next stage?
I forget what they all are.
Oh, okay. I know Stevenage is one, but I can't remember what the other one is.
It's irrelevant. It's irrelevant.
Is one.
Sorry, Councillor Deering.
I think Letchworth is another one. It is Stevenage and Letchworth.
Letchworth and Stevenage in the north.
But there's one other. There are three.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Croydon, I think.
Thank you. I think at that stage we have to take a vote on this by now. So the recommendations are on page 62, and I'm sure this is going to be an issue that will come up again at future council meetings. So it is A, that East Herts Council supports in principle the aspirations of LTP4 and the Sustainable Travel Town criteria, and B, East Herts Council supports in principle towns wishing to submit bids for Sustainable Travel Town status. So if you could click the green yes or the red no, or if you're abstaining, the blue hand. Thank you. Thank you very much. Then that is carried. We now go to 8B, and that's the review of the outcomes of the parking task and finish group. And this has been presented, and it's Councillor McAndrew again proposing.
Yeah, this is on the RPZs, Chairman, just bear with me.
These are the residence parking zones.
Yeah. Yeah, this is the amendment in the residential parking zone, and the document, paragraph 2.24, can be seen in the executive report, and asking for that to be adopted. There's a number of points in there, and I presume everybody's actually read the document and seen the points it's raised. It's also in the document's been read, and I propose the amendment, the recommendation to council.
Thank you. And Councillor Bolton?
I'm happy to second that, Chair.
Thank you very much, Councillor Bolton. Councillor Sophie Bell?
I would like to express my disappointment in the scrapping of the lobbying for additional car park spaces at Watton at Stone. I was part of the task and finish group on parking, and this particular proposal was put forward due to a specific situation in Watton, whereby the station car park is actually full from 6:30 every morning with cars, and the cars that turn up to use the station after that time park down residential streets, causing immense blockage and major disruption for residents. The reason the car park itself has been the same size for decades, and being in a rural station, there is no other way for people from surrounding villages realistically to access our station to get to work in the mornings, as the last bus runs at 5:30 at night, which quite frankly is not feasible for anybody to use to get home after a long shift in London. And other options that might be available to towns like Bishop Stortford, such as residents' parking zones, aren't really feasible in somewhere like Watton, where the station is a 10-minute walk away from the entire village. So short of pushing the problem around the village, there's nothing else we really can do to alleviate the problem of lack of station car parking in Watton at Stone, besides extending the car park, which would actually be relatively easy for the council to do, because the car park actually consists of a very large number of grass verges between each of the spaces. It would be possible to pretty much double the capacity of the car park just by pretty much tarmacking over those grass verges. So I would like to ask the executive to reconsider the scrapping of that policy. I think it's imperative for rural communities like ours, where we do have a lot of people from surrounding villages using our train stations to get to work, and I would like to call for I don't know if it's possible for me to call for an amendment to get rid of that, get rid of the cessation of that recommendation from the Executive Council.
Well, let's get a response in a moment from Councillor McAndrew on that. Councillor Goldspink.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, I'm rather disappointed that we've not been given the opportunity to discuss the executive's feelings when they were reviewing the parking task and finish group's recommendations. Now, that group worked really hard and did produce a great many very detailed and I thought very sensible recommendations. So I am disappointed that we do not have the chance to discuss those properly tonight. And I do have a great deal of sympathy for what Councillor Bell says for the particular difficulties at Watton. So those would be my comments about the parking task and finish. With regard to the recommendation for the amendment to the residential parking zone policy, I do fully support that recommendation. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Goldspink. Councillor Chris Wilson.
Thank you, Chairman. I would just like to express my support for the very sensible change to the RPZ policy, and I hope that ultimately this will help some of my residents in All Saints Ward in Bishop Stortford with their difficulties with an immense amount of airport parking in the area. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Hazy.
Thank you, Chairman. Firstly, do you know, Councillor Bell, or someone can help me out on this, whether or not the East Herts District Council owns the land where the cars park at Watton at Stone Station?
It does not, but the original recommendation was that the council would lobby the people that do have control over it to expand the provision there.
Okay, but that is a very difficult thing to do. I think we also have to be very conscious that we have no idea at the moment how train travel and work travel is going to actually pan out in the next over the next 12 months. So I think it's very important that we try and look at this in a balanced way, that we do not go and tarmac over green verges because it is not environmentally friendly, and we need to look at other ways to help people get to stations, as we have discussed earlier. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hazy. Councillor Jeff Jones.
Yes, Councillor Hazy has stolen my thunder. Yeah, I will just say again, I'm really surprised that Councillor Bell, those those green verges are there for a reason. That's why they've been put there. You know, it's a rural area. So she's advocating tarmacking the countryside, basically, aren't you? So I find that an absolutely very, very strange proposal. Those verges are there for a reason, and they should remain there. We don't want our countryside totally tarmacked over.
Thank you, Councillor Jeff Jones. Councillor Joseph Dumont.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, I would just like to come to the support of what Councillor Bell is saying and completely support her in that. And then also just make the point, a few points have been made here in this discussion, about criticisms of opposition members with regard to sustainability and grass verges. Remind members this is a council that voted against a climate emergency and wanted to water that down. So I feel a little bit aggrieved that we're being criticised there when we had a vote on the sentiment probably about a year ago now. And I don't think we should be prepared to be lectured or criticised by members that, when they had the opportunity to really put a stamp on it, chose not to do so.
Thank you, Councillor Dumont. Councillor Bob Deering.
Thank you again, Chairman. I'm afraid I'm again going to say I'm astonished at some of the comments coming in from opposition members. There seems to be a complete contradiction in their sustainability credentials. It's one thing to make a fuss at a full council meeting some months ago. It's a completely different thing when it comes down to the nuts and bolts of trying to do the right things to promote sustainability. Apropos the car park issue at Watton and Stone, I'd be very interested to know what Councillor Bell thinks will happen when because it's there, the car park fills up with cars. What would she then do? Build another car park? Tarmac over more grass? Just doesn't make sense. Thank you.
Councillor Carolyn Redfern.
I would like to support Councillor Bell as well, because it's all, when you're talking about sustainability, it's all about balancing the things, and tarmacking a few grass verges is much better than having cars travelling into London from around Watton and Stone because they can't park to catch the train. You have to balance the two. And I think it seems to me that we're putting the cart before the horse. If we want people to use public transport, we have to provide it. Once we have provided it, in whichever innovative way we can come up with, dial a bus or whatever, then we can start telling people you can't park. But we have to provide, that comes before all this negative stuff about stopping people using their cars. I agree with it, absolutely agree with stopping people using their cars, but we have to get it in the right order.
Thank you very much. Councillor Alex Curtis.
Thank you, Chairman. I feel that this meeting's become like a task and finish group session in which we're discussing at length one particular verge in one ward. I don't doubt that it's important that the people of Watton and Stone have somewhere to park if they need to park somewhere near the station, but it sounds like they're already able to do so. You don't need to tarmac over the verge. You can park on the verge. It's quite standard practice in rural areas. If you want to park on the tarmac, then you could move to town, because that's what it'll become if you quit over everything.
Thank you, Councillor Curtis. Councillor Tony Stowe.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm just listening to what we're hearing here about this parking business, and being a rural member myself, and a member that used to travel up to London every single day, getting on the train at 10 to 7 in the morning, if not earlier, and coming back at sort of 8:30, 9 o'clock at night, using the train at my local station, which is over a mile away. And frequently in the summer, I used to cycle. Now, we're in a time now, I've been retired from working in London for a few years, but surely we should be encouraged in that sort of transport. If we build a big car park, more cars will use it. We build another bigger car park and more cars will come and park. We want to put the price of these car parks up by station, put it up higher to stop people using them as car parks and using bicycles. And these days, we've got really these electric bikes, much easier. I've got a pedal card. But I just find it amazing what I'm hearing.
All right, thank you very much, Councillor Stowe. Let's, Councillor Bell, I'm sorry, I can't come back to you, but Councillor McAndrew, do you want to answer some of these points that have been raised?
Yeah, the parking at railway stations and long stay parking.
The sound is a bit strange coming from your microphone. I don't know what it, do you want to just try it again? No, you're muted now, right?
Yeah, can you hear me now?
Yeah,
hello?
It's not brilliantly clear, so if you can make your points crisply, that would be good.
Okay, long stay car parking is down to 15 to 20% of what it was pre-COVID, and it hasn't really increased. And one of the things that we're actually looking at now is converting long stay car parking spaces into short stay car parking spaces so shoppers can use them. More people can come into town, spend the money and move on. If I look at the railway station in Bishop Stortford, it takes hundreds of cars. On most days it's between 50 and 80 cars per day, people commuting into London. People are now working from home. The whole way that we work has evolved. So what we've actually said out of the task and finish is that we will wait until something of a norm comes back. What that norm is, none of us know. But what we have found is that more and more people are working from home. They've upgraded the broadband, we're buying IT equipment, and you take County Council, you take East Hearts District Council, all the employees more or less work from home. They don't commute into work now like they used to, and when we do go back to some norm, they will only be working, certain people will be going back into the office, but it won't be what it was before. Trains, the train companies are looking for subsidies because there's not enough people in the trains to pay for the trains. So we're in a different world, and the car park at Watnestone or wherever it is, Bishop Stortford, Hertford Rail, it's a completely different world, and we've got to take a step back, reflect, and come back in a year's time to understand what the situation is and how we move forward. And people are taking bicycles, you know, lots of people want bicycles for Christmas, but the manufacturers of bicycles can't manufacture enough. There's months and months of a backlog for them. So all these people who want a Christmas present of a bicycle can't have it because the manufacturers aren't making it. So,
all right, Councillor McAndrew, I mean, the quality, I don't know what it is. I'm assuming other people are experiencing it too, that it's almost Dalek type quality, but I think we got the gist of what you were saying, or most of what you were saying, which is going to be interesting because I think you're proposing the next item as well. So I think we'll take a vote on this now. Sorry, Councillor Devonshire, did you want to come in very briefly, or is that from before?
Yeah, so it's just one very, very positive point I want to make, and that is that recommendations 13 and 15 both talk about electric vehicle charging, adding extra bays, etc., into our car parks. I think this is so important because in 9 years' time, you all know you won't be able to buy a petrol or diesel car in this country. 9 years is not a long time, so we need to get those electric vehicle charging points in fairly soon. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Devonshire. Now we'll vote on the recommendation anyway, which is that the amendment in the residential parking zone policy, as described in paragraph 2.24 and appendix, be adopted. Green tick for yes, red cross for no, please. Right, thank you very much indeed, and that is carried. And we'll move on now to 8C, shared waste, shared service alignment of commercial waste and recycling services. And Councillor McAndrew, let's see what happens this time.
Can you hear me?
I think it might even be slightly worse actually than it was a few minutes ago. I'm wondering if Graham, you want to try just coming out and coming back in again, and then we'll come back to you on this. So we'll skip to the next item, and then we'll try again. So we'll go to 8D, which is the Hertfordshire Growth Board Joint Committee proposal, and Councillor Linda Hazy.
Thank you very much, Chairman. As you know, the Hertfordshire Growth Board has been established for the last couple of years in a fairly informal way. The Growth Board was set up to look at coordinating growth across Hertfordshire, and we've worked very closely with all 10 district and borough leaders and the county council and the LEP. We have now got to the time where we need to set it up in a way that enables more public engagement and more transparency, and set it on a much tighter legal footing. And that is the proposal this evening. We and Stevenage this evening are voting on this at full council because it is a full council decision. All other boroughs and the LEP have already agreed to this. So Stevenage and us are last to the table. So I propose this recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hazy. Councillor Alex Curtis.
Thank you. I'd like to second this recommendation. It's about time that this very important body is formalised, as the leader quite rightly said. We've got a very detailed proposals been put together of how we're going to do this, and I think it's something we can all get behind. And we're going to have representation on there by the currently the leader, but there's also going to be the scrutiny committee as well, which will be there to scrutinise the work of the Growth Board. It's extremely important body in that it coordinates allows all of the local councils and the LEP to coordinate things and to work together to ensure we get the growth we need, to make sure that when we get the houses, we get the jobs to come with them, and make sure that Hertfordshire is as prosperous as possible, which is something that we all want to see. So yeah, great work been put into it, and we should back this.
Thank you, Councillor Curtis. Councillor Ben Crystal.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It sounds very interesting and positive. I just wondered whether how the meetings will be available to people like us who aren't members. Will there be minutes published and agendas like normal?
Right. Thank you, Councillor Crystal. Councillor Myoni Goldspeed.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The Liberal Democrat group is happy to support this recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And Councillor Hazy, do you want to come back on any of these points?
Yes, no, thank you, Councillor Goldspeed. I'm very pleased that the Lib Dems have agreement on this and recognise the importance of coordinating the growth and the request for money from government for the infrastructure on this. Councillor Crystal, yes, we have a board meeting tomorrow of the Hertfordshire Growth Board where the detailed governance will be agreed, and yes, there will be public ability to see the minutes and the agendas. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That's item 8D, and the recommendations at the bottom of page 63 on to 64. And if you could vote, please, green yes or red no. Thank you. Thank you. That too is carried, and I think I saw Councillor McAndrew back again. Shall we try it again, Councillor McAndrew?
Hello, Chairman. Can you hear me?
Yes, that's much better. Good. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
This is a reminder that this is item 8C, and it is the shared service alignment of commercial waste and recycling services. Go ahead.
Yeah, when the two councils, East Hants and North Hants, came together in 2017, one of the things that didn't happen was the realignment of the fees and charging regard waste services as set out in the report. And this is a realignment of that service. And in consultation with the Head of Strategic Finance and Property and the Executive Member, refer this to the decision to the Council. So any questions?
Okay, thank you very much indeed. Councillor Bob Deering.
Thank you, Chairman. Sorry, can you?
Yes, we can hear you. Yeah.
Can you hear me? If you can hear me, I'm very happy to second this. I reserve my right to speak. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any other comments or questions on this particular issue? Councillor Goldsmith.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The Liberal Democrat Group is very happy to support these recommendations. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Deering, did you want to say anything else about this?
No, thank you very much, Chair. In the circumstances, I have nothing further to say. Thank you.
That's fine. Councillor McAndrew?
No, nothing further.
Right.
Propose the recommendation, Chairman.
That's fine. We can vote then, and the green tick or the red cross. Thank you. Thank you very much indeed. That's carried. And we now move on to 8E, and this is the annual Treasury Management Review 2019-2020. Councillor Jeffrey Williamson.
Thank you, Chairman. Well, the Council is required to produce an annual Treasury Management Review of activities and the actual prudential and Treasury indicators each year. This has been duly undertaken, and Appendix A, starting on page 141, contains the full review and the outturn report. The review has been considered by the Audit and Governance Committee and the Executive, and I'm pleased to move, if I may, the single recommendation under paragraph 6 on page 64.
Thank you very much. Councillor Alistair Ward-Booth.
I'm happy to second that recommendation, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. And if there are no other comments or questions, if we can vote on this particular one on the middle page 64, and that's usual procedure. Thank you very much. That's carried. And now we go on to 8F, the Treasury Management Mid-Year Review 2019-2020. Councillor Williamson again.
Well, thank you again, Chairman. Well, this is similar to the previous item, but covers the Treasury Management Mid-Year Review for this current year. Appendix G, which starts on page 163, contains the review, and again, it's been considered by Audit and Governance and the Executive. I would like to draw members' attention to the third recommendation, which is to raise our county party limit with the bank from 20 million to 30 million, which has been brought about earlier this year by the rather unusual circumstances of receiving a very large lump sum from government funding for the COVID-related business support grants, which briefly exceeded the current limit. So if I may, please, Chairman, I'd like to move this and the other two recommendations together, being A to C under paragraph 7 on page 64.
Thank you very much indeed. Councillor Andrew Huggins. No, is he here? Councillor Huggins, no? Okay, well, can I have a seconder, please?
Yeah, I'll be very happy to second that.
Right, Councillor Pope, thank you very much indeed. And we can take a vote on it then. Green tick or red cross? you very much. That's carried. Item 9, the council tax base. It's on page 189 and I think also 195. Councillor Williamson.
Thank you again, Chairman. Well, this item comes to us every year at this time, and it sets out the anticipated council tax base at district and parish levels for the next financial year. It is an important piece of work as these numbers are used as part of the overall calculation of council tax, levied not only by ourselves, but also the county, town and parish councils and the police. It considers the number of Band D equivalent properties within each area after taking into account any relevant discounts and adjustments as explained in the report. I must stress that the way we calculate the tax base is governed by statute, and actually we have very limited discretion over the result. However, we as the council are required to approve the paper formally in order that the other billing authorities can be notified of the tax base figure. And to this end, there are 2 recommendations, A and B, on page 189, which I'd like to move, please, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Williamson. Councillor Peter Ruffles.
I'm happy to second, Chairman.
Thank you very much, Councillor Ruffles. And we can then take a vote, and the green tick and the red cross. Thank you, and that one is carried. Item 9. On to item 10, unreasonable and persistent behaviour policy. This is on page 197. Councillor George Cutting.
Thank you, Chairman, and good evening, members. So the draft policy on unreasonable and persistent behaviour is designed to replace the current vexatious complainant policy and provide more flexibility for the council in terms of dealing with customers. Generally speaking, most customers are happy with their overall experience, and for those who are not, we have a formal complaint policy so they can seek redress. Challenges sometimes arise where customers have been through this process and are still not happy with the outcome. In the past, if this has become excessive, we have labelled them as vexatious, written a formal letter to them and told them not to contact us anymore. My view is that approach is something of a blunt tool. Often the reaction to receiving a letter like this isn't positive, and in cases where customers may have complex needs and lifestyles, it hasn't helped in any way. The reality is that very few customers end up in this situation, but many more are simply dissatisfied with the service they have received, and it's okay for them to express themselves. What we need, however, is a policy which allows customers to feedback their concerns in a way where we don't need to use the language of vexatious, but are making best use of public resource. What the new policy does is to set out a series of actions and interventions that are proportionate to the customer's behaviour. For example, if someone has been through the complaints process but persists with contact because they aren't happy with the outcome, then we can simply say that we aren't going to continue responding to your emails anymore, but we'll keep them on record. If someone is taking a scattergun approach and continually contacting multiple officers about the same issue, we can say we are going to give you a single point of contact, and they will agree to update you once a week or month, or whatever it may be. If someone is being unnecessarily aggressive or abusive, we can say that we're only going to continue dialogue on the basis that conversation is civil. There are a whole range of steps we can take which help us manage our resources better, protect staff, and not stigmatise our customers. The policy has been considered by Overview and Scrutiny, who recommended it be approved by Council. So I hope you can endorse this evening. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much indeed, Councillor Cutting. Councillor Angela Alder.
I have pleasure in seconding this proposal, and I think it's eminently sensible, and thank the officers who drew up the policy. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Alder. Councillor Myoni Goldsby.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, the Liberal Democrat group is very happy to support this proposal. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Tony Stowe.
Yes, thanks, Chairman. Just one quick point I wanted to ask, really, is that with this policy, has consideration for mental health issues been taken into account? Because I have a couple of people that I support within my ward that have excessive mental health problems, and they really do find it difficult to communicate with people if people actually do not listen to them, and they can get very aggressive. It appears aggressive, but it's not really. And I just want to make sure that we've considered the mental health issue of our residents. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Stowe. Councillor Linda Hazy.
Yes, thank you. I totally support this revision of the acceptable behaviour within the council or by residents to our officers. I think a lot of people have had a lot of time at home, obviously, in the last 6 to 8 months, and officers have been subjected in a number of cases to very rude, very aggressive emails because people have got the time to sit and write them. And I think this is totally unacceptable behaviour, and it's not good for the mental health for our officers. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Cutting, do you want to comment on some of those points?
Yes, I just wanted to add that perhaps with regard to Councillor Stowe's observations, that's the very reason why we're changing the policy, so that we're seen to be more inclusive and understanding of the wide-ranging needs of residents. And we do not wish to impact any further on lifestyles or possible health issues that they might be exuding. We hope to be able to pick those up in the early correspondence and deal with them appropriately. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Cutting. Can we vote on this now, please? And the green tick or the red cross if you're in favour or not. Thank you, and that is carried, and that brings us almost to the end of tonight's meeting. A reminder, by the way, about the money for Isabel Hospice, East Hertfordshire District Council, if you're going to do it online, or a cheque is possible. Councillor Hazy, you said earlier the number of people are looking fairly drawn towards the close of the year. Were there any people in particular you had in mind?
Chairman, I wouldn't dream of making such a personal comment, certainly not on Zoom when it's still being recorded.
Okay,
but I would like to wish everyone a very happy Christmas, try and get a break, and gosh, let's get into January and just hope that things will start getting better. Thank you.
What a year it has been. Well, that concludes our meeting at 9:28. Thank you very much. I wish you all a very